I think the titles, if I recall, I think I just printed them off in that sort of turn of the century effect and shot them on Super 8 II. Yeah, and obviously I used black and white film, I think. God, it's so long ago, I can't remember what I did, but I think it was black and white film, so it actually is as it was. There's been no Final Cut Pro or video treatment on that since, other than cutting it afterwards. So yeah.
So you edited it mechanically and then just transferred it electronically?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, it was literally cut with like splicing and that sort of thing, which takes a long time, but it was great. It was really nice to do that. I enjoyed it immensely. And then only recently, really for this, really sort of transferred it to tape for the first time. So it's been sort of languishing on film for a while. It's been nice, actually. Any other questions? Hello, at the very back.
Just wondering where you learnt your trade from. Were you a film studies student or?
Yeah, I did. I learnt film studies at university, but it didn't really teach me an awful lot about film, to be honest. It taught me an appreciation of film, but it wasn't a practical course. It was very much a theoretical course, and Simon will know because we went to the same university. I had some discussions with the people there and said, "Oh, can we have some of the equipment and just practice filmmaking?" And they were kind of dead against it, very much a theoretical course. And so my first one came about because of that, because I just sort of borrowed some equipment from somewhere and shot film. The training itself is just a lot of reading books about shots, a lot of not so much watching films. I'm actually not a big film watcher, oddly enough, but the films that I do like, I watch a lot. And it's more a sense of, if you see something that really captures your imagination, you kind of know straight away what they've done to make that work, if that makes sense. But I see a blockbuster, a Hollywood blockbuster, and I have no idea how that works because I've got no interest in it. But I see for example, a David Lynch film, for example, and I can spot straight away how that's been done, and I'll try and sort of base some of the stuff on that, if that makes sense. I don't think that's answered your question, has it? I don't know.
So where did you learn all the editing, or you self-taught?
Yeah, pretty much self-taught. Yeah, I think I did at college. I did. Do they still do City and Guilds? I don't know. Do they not? I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, something called, back in the old days, there was something called the City and Guilds, and I did a TV and video studies thing there. But that was like using old-fashioned VHS equipment, which it was naff. Even then, it was naff. And so for a long time, there's a period in the 90s where it was hard to make films because unless you had a lot of money, you couldn't make something fairly decent because it was just expensive. Whereas it came the turn of the century, and it became much easier because you could get yourself an Apple Mac fairly cheaply, you could get Final Cut Pro relatively cheaply, and I taught myself Final Cut Pro and Avid. And then once you taught yourself Final Cut Pro and Avid, you can do anything because they're editing programs for those who don't know, and you can just cut away to your heart's content. And I'm still teaching myself. There's still things now that I'm still trying to teach myself how to do. I mean, I sort of, apart from running various video projects and running various arts projects, I've never worked for a production house. I've never worked for a big company. Like that, I try and remain as independent as possible. I try and remain as far away from that as possible. That will change when I start to go into the next feature production, possibly. But I've worked in TV before, and it's depressing. It really is. It's, or at least it was back when I was doing it. It was there was so little creativity. There was so little independence there. It was very much geared to sales and all that sort of thing. And it wasn't very artistic, if that makes sense. And I knew early on that I didn't really want to be involved in that. So teaching myself how to do things and remaining independent was very important to me. I think when you look at some of the independent Hollywood directors even, I mean, I mentioned David Lynch, Tim Burton's kind of another one, but he's a bit more commercial these days, but that's no bad thing, but they struggle to make films. It's a real struggle. And if you think these big names you've heard of are struggling to make films, imagine what it's like for people you've never heard of to make films. You know, really is a struggle. But they almost always come up with the goods. It's always better to have done something yourself than to sort of make a film by committee, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Oh, good. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, good. That's brilliant. Anybody else has a question? Yes, thank you.
How do you get your funding at the moment?
There is no funding at the moment. Can I sit down? It would be awfully rude if I sat down. Can you see me?
No, that's fine.
Oh. Can you not see me, really?
Just about. It's
Alright, I'll stand up. All right. I was getting too familiar, wasn't I? Sorry about that. There is no funding for the short films. That's kind of the way I like it. I remember when the few films you've just seen were on Sky TV fairly recently, and we were really pleased. It was like, oh yeah, it's on TV and all that sort of thing. And then you see other films that are on like before or after, and they've got this huge cast list, and they're funded by this, that, and the other. And I think I wouldn't want to do that for a short film. I really wouldn't. If someone gave me, I mean, honestly, some of these films, short films, they're costing 100,000, $250,000. They're expensive, some of these films. And I wouldn't want to do that. I really would not want to do that. For me, a short film should be spontaneous. It should be about something now, and it should capture something. I wouldn't want